And so what do you think is going to happen with the Democrats going forward, Jordan? Do you have an opinion?
I think that if I respect Republicans on one thing, they fight. They didn't, it was deranged. It was a detriment to the country, but they blocked Obama at every turn. You know what I mean? I think I'm starting to hear Democrats coming out. Yeah, we're willing to work with you on an Obamacare repeal. We're willing. I mean, they're already sitting ducks, just bowing down to Trump and Republicans. I mean, the bottom line is, you need to look back. You have young people. If you have the right message and you start catering to millennials and the progressive community, you have an army behind you. This is not the time to sit there and try to work with Donald Trump. We know what Donald Trump's going to do, and we know the people around him what they're going to try to do. But unfortunately, I think the Democrats are going to try to give Donald Trump a honeymoon period. I think they're going to roll over on certain things. I don't love Obamacare. I think it's a Republican healthcare plan, but it's better than, what was before. I think they're going to roll over on that, not put up much of a fuss. I think that this infrastructure plan that Trump has, which in reality is not direct money from the federal government. He wants to do some jiu-jitsu plan that's basically giving private contractors sexual favors. I think the Democrats are going to go along with that. I see more spineless Democratic behavior. I see Chuck Schumer, who's leading the Democrats. Chuck Schumer, the same donors that donate to Chuck Schumer donate to Republicans. Chuck Schumer's not going to do anything for working class people because Chuck Schumer, he just wants the title. And he got that title by bending over for banks. So I see a lot of spineless Democrats. The only saving grace, you got Bernie, you got Keith Ellison, you got Elizabeth Warren when she feels like being progressive, which is a whole nother story. But I don't see much change among the Democrats. I really don't. I think they're going to really initially they're going to do the opposite of what the Republicans do. They're going to try to work with Trump in the beginning instead of being a unified force against him from day one.
Yeah, it just looks like that's why I keep saying that Bernie should leave the Democratic Party, because it's going to take a couple election cycles to change the Democratic Party. They're just not afraid of their base like the Republicans are. So when the Tea Party happened, when a black guy with a Muslim name became president, the Tea Party had a big voice because they were sick of that. And now Tiny Hands is president, and the progressives and the left should be just as outraged, but they're not going to do anything because they're weak, because they're bought by the same people, and so that's why I think if Bernie, Keith Ellison, they maybe started a third party, they could get probably 15 to 20% of the vote. And then the Democrats have to come to them and form a unity party. They have to. They can't ignore us like they did last time. I mean, that's the only thing I can see that would maybe work, because it doesn't seem like the Democrats are going to be able to get their shit together. It doesn't seem like they're going to be able to pin this stuff on Donald Trump. I'm hoping they can. The problem is, there is still the problem. Nancy Pelosi being in bed with Wall Street, Chuck Schumer in bed with Wall Street, that is the problem. You can't oppose a party that's supposed to be corrupt in business with your own brand of corruption. And that's the fucking problem. And people are sick and tired of establishment politics, and that's all the Democrats are offering them for. And Bernie Sanders is fucking lining up behind them. It doesn't make any sense. The fact that they still have to fight to get Keith Ellison over that guy Perez, and Barack Obama is still trying to screw over the progressives in his own party, and half of his own party are still asleep when it comes to Barack Obama. All this shit, just the fact that George Bush came into office, somebody I follow on Twitter made this point, George Bush came into office, ordered the intelligence agency to do an investigation and to pin 9/11 on Saddam Hussein, even though it was fake and phony, but he wanted him to make a plausible case, and they did. And then Barack Obama, as he's leaving, tells the CIA to make a case against Russia in the election, which, by the way, even if they prove that it's true that it was Russia that went ahead and hacked Podesta's email, guess what Russia did after that? They spread the truth around. That's what they did. They didn't lie. They didn't smear them. They didn't make fake news stories like aluminum tubes did on the front of the New York Times. No, they just spread around the truth. If they did it. So the problem is the content of the hack. The problem isn't the hack. And so what a more fitting a way for Barack Obama to exit. This the same way George Bush came into office is the same way Barack Obama's exiting, by bullshitting the country and by distracting people against the real issue. The real issue is that our government has been bought. That's the real problem. Dylan Ratigan screamed about it 3 years ago on MSNBC, which is why you never fucking hear Dylan Ratigan anymore. And I'm talking about it now, and everybody else except you and me and a few other people are talking about Russia. And it just goes to show you how easy our country gets bullshitted and how bad journalism is. And now they're talking about Facebook's going to start taking down fake news. Fake news comes from the New York Times, CNN, and MSNBC and Washington Post. That's where fucking fake news comes from. So if you're going to try to get, hey, how did we get in Iraq in the first place? And why are all the guys who are right about Iraq never seen on TV anymore? Where the fuck is Phil Donahue? You never see him. But you know who you always see? Bill Kristol, Chris Matthews, and all the other jagoff news people who led us into a war like Brian Williams. But you'll never see people who got it right about the war, like people like Phil Donahue. So I have no, it's really coming down to people like you, Jordan, people like David Sirota, people like Glenn Greenwald, people who still are skeptical of government and aren't going along with groupthink, like half the left, even more of the left. It's disgusting. I thought losing to Donnie Tanahans would break them out of it, but it isn't. It's like they doubled down. They're doubling down. The Clara Jeffries, the Joan Walshes, right? The people at the Washington Post, New York Times, everybody at least Chris Hayes at MSNBC said we should be skeptical. Go ahead.
Politico's Glenn Thrush, who literally in WikiLeaks called himself a hack, asked John Podesta not to share the fact that he was literally showing Podesta his story before published and letting Podesta edit it. He just got a job at the New York Times. This is the media we're dealing with. A Politico guy who called himself a hack in WikiLeaks, promoted to the New York Times. I want to say two other things. First, it is my belief, I think you might agree, Bernie Sanders would be president right now if he ran as an independent or in the Green Party. He'd be president.
He would be president.
Bernie Sanders wins Michigan. I don't care if you say he's from the Banana Party. He wins Wisconsin. He wins Pennsylvania. Most likely wins Florida. Bernie Sanders, unfortunately, he's got the right message and the right core values, but I got to be honest, he's been in Washington, D.C. too long. And he believes that the way to make the real change is through the system. And unfortunately, he's wrong. I love the guy, but I disagree with him on that. Secondly, all right, let's say Russia hacked the DNC. Let's say they hacked John Podesta. If you read the New York Times story, literally, they didn't have, from the time the FBI contacted the DNC, the FBI and Debbie Wasserman Schultz didn't meet for almost a year. After the original FBI agent reached out to the DNC. The FBI person, according to the story in the New York Times, reached out to the director of tech. They went back and forth on the phone. 2 or 3 months went by till they even met in person. Obama knew about this for a year, didn't come out formally until a month before the election. So you know what? If Russia hacked into the DNC, into Hillary Clinton's campaign, well, here's two things the media is not covering. What about the intelligence failures that you literally had a year go by before the FBI met in person with the chairwoman of the party that was supposedly hacked? And why is the United States so susceptible to cyber attacks from Russia? Is the media covering any of that? No, it's just the Cold War fear-mongering. I don't have anything personal at stake to defend Russia. If it was Russia, it was Russia. But I learned from the Iraq War. I learned when the CIA lies to us about how many innocent civilians are killed in drone strikes, which they constantly lie about. They lie. The CIA's job is to lie. So as a journalist, your default thinking is supposed to be they're lying. You don't just trust because these people have become like Pez dispensers for the powerful. MSNBC, CNN, New York Times. That's all it is. Official say becomes these are the facts. And as long as journalism stays that way, you are aiding the corruption. Because again, the Democrats want this story out there so you don't focus on their corruption, them being bought off.
And that's why, and don't you think that's why they're making such a big stink about fake news? Again, it's another distraction from what the fuck the real problem is, that the Democrats are there's no reason for the Democratic Party to exist because they're not an opposition party anymore. They're the same thing. They take the money from the same people and they push the same policies. And that's not bullshit. That's what's fucking happening. And that's why she lost and that's why Donald Trump won. What do you think about that? Do you think that's why they're pushing this fake news thing?
You know what, Jimmy? Let me tell you what real news is. And I don't mean this arrogantly, but this is what I believe. Real news is the Young Turks on a shoestring budget, if we're keeping it real, sending me out 5 times to Standing Rock, taking me off the campaign trail 2 weeks before the election, to send me back to Standing Rock, sending me into communities to do videos where we know it's not going to go viral. Some of the stories I'm doing, not yet. But going out because it's important. That's real news. Fake news is the New York Times, CNN, NBC, who have mammoth resources, huge corporate conglomerates writing their checks, parked out in Trump Towers instead of on a bridge when North Dakota police shot off a girl's arm. That's fake news. Fake news isn't only what you see on Facebook. Fake news is when you make choices editorially to cover the trivial and the substanceless versus human rights and war crimes going on American soil. That's fake news. Fake news is when for 8 hours a day you cover a tweet from Donald Trump. That's fake news. So they could define fake news however they want. But when I see Brian Stelter, Mr. Reliable Sources, tweet out this nonsense about Russia and the media's responsibility, and should the media have even reported on WikiLeaks? I mean, this is like people who rob banks teaching us about fiscal responsibility. It's ridiculous. So I don't buy into this fake news stuff. I think the Young Turks, Democracy Now!, honestly, there's satirists, Lee Camp, who's a political satirist, that are doing harder news than I see on cable news or broadcast news. So I think that says enough about real news versus fake news.
But Chris Hayes does have a fucking kick-ass suit.
I know. You've said. And Chris Hayes, by the way, he used to be like a real progressive. He used to do good stuff. He put on that $6 million suit, according to you. I'd love to know your sources. And he's just one of them now. It's like as soon as you put the makeup on, you put the suit on, you lose all sense of aggressive progressiveness.
Hey, thank you very much. I put on the $60 suit anyway. But let me ask you. Oh no, I just fucking thought I was. I just fucking lost my question. I had a perfect question, and I can't remember what it was.
As soon as I compliment you, you lose all sense of.
I do. I just get. I turn into Donnie Tynahands. You like me, right? You like me? You really like me, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, my first question. The $6 million, Chris Hayes, has not been disputed. So as soon as he disputes it, I'll correct the record. But listen, Jordan, thank you so much for taking time to talk to us. What are you on to next?
I am going on Saturday to Texas. Where I'll be covering the Trans-Pecos pipeline. This pipeline, it's the same company, Energy Transfer Partners. It's going from Texas into Mexico. So apparently Trump won't send our jobs to Mexico, but he'll send our oil to Mexico. So this one's going from Texas to Mexico. And it's not just Native Americans pissed off about this, Jimmy. It's conservative cowboys who are having their land stolen by eminent domain. So I'm going to go talk to the cowboys on this one.
And by the way, eminent domain actually came up in the campaign, and Trump was for eminent domain, and Republican conservatives are against eminent domain. So this will be interesting. Again, Donnie Tynahands is going to do everything he possibly can to reveal to the people, the white working class, that what he claimed to be, he's not, that he's the opposite. And Eric had that video from the Nick Smith from the Fight for 15 rally, who said that, Southerners all all know who Donald Trump was. A few years ago, they all hated him. They thought he was a big mouth, loudmouth Yankee carpetbagger, and they didn't want anything to do with him. And they said he should have got his ass whipped a long time ago. And so he's just going to reveal that he's exactly what they thought he was. The only difference is that they knew more who Hillary Clinton was for sure. And then they were just, Donnie Tynahands at least threw them a rope, right? He threw them a little bit something, and they grabbed onto it. Well, now they're back to the same old, where both parties are fucking them, and both parties have turned their back on them. And that's what people are going to be left with. And that's why the Democrats need to get rid of Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer, and get rid of all those people who are corporate Democrats. And Bernie Sanders needs to lead. He needs to lead the way and shout it out. And if he doesn't, it's a loser. Everything he's done is for nothing. And we got to do something now, because if we don't do something by 2018, it's going to be dire straits for America. This could be a wake-up call. It is a wake-up call. All of a sudden, already people are organizing. People see what Trump is doing is bad, even though the Democrats have been doing the exact same bad stuff. So, by the way, Donald Trump hasn't started a war yet or expanded into Somalia, or I don't know. I wonder what countries he's going to go into. Maybe Iran. Anyway, but Jordan, go ahead.
One more thing. If the Democratic establishment is brazen enough to railroad Keith Ellison and try to insert Tom Perez, who's pro-TPP, pro-everything establishment, they're going to lose a whole nother generation of voters, because young people are already not coming back to the Democratic Party. But if you try to sabotage the one gleam of hope for progressivism other than Bernie Sanders, they're self-sabotaging by doing that. So,
but if they don't do that and they lose to Trump again in 2020 and they lose again in 2018, it'll be my fault, I guess.
Yes.
It'll be James Comey's fault. It'll be your fault and Glenn Greenwald's fault. It'll be everybody out there who's actually doing journalism and telling the truth about our horrible corporate duopoly that runs our country. It's our fault. It's not actually the people who have power who are letting the American people down. Remember that. It's never the people with power. It's always the people who are pointing out where power is letting us down. We're a nation full of adult children of alcoholics. We don't get mad at the guy screwing us. We get mad at the guy telling us that there's a guy screwing us. So, Jordan, thanks again. Everybody check out Jordan at TYT Politics. He's doing great work over there that nobody else is doing in this country. So thanks to Jordan Chariton for stopping by. Anything else you want to say before we say goodbye?
A Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
Okay, thanks, Jordan. Hey, we're doing another live Jimmy Dore show the day after Christmas, December 26th. We're doing a live Jimmy Dore show in Burbank, California. Come see it. There's a link for tickets right there.